Resources for Safe Technology in Schools webinar. My name is Faith Samus, if you're not familiar with who I am. Why I started on this particular journey was really because of my school-age children and the effect I knew it was having in the school. And, you know, as a concerned parent, I did my due diligence and research on it. And that's why I'm here to share with you. So just to get started, I guess a brief background on it. If you're joining us by now, you should know that, you know, RFs are harmful and biological effects are a serious concern. Children ages anywhere from infant up to 21 years old are in a particularly high risk category to radio frequency exposures, not only because of their apparent physical differences to an adult, but because they're going to have a lifetime of exposure compared to us as adults now. So it's a huge concern, especially when you take into consideration an average school setting, which is anywhere from about 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, 10 months out of every single year for 13 years of their education. And that's not including any higher education that they seek in college or what exposures they're getting at home and possibly at work for some of the older children who are of working age. So children are capable of absorbing 10 times more radiation than an adult. And because their bodies are smaller, bones are dense, and radiation penetrates deeper into their bodies, it's a serious cause, again, for concern, and specifically for those reasons. There's been several respected studies that have found it takes a mere 4 hours of wireless laptop use to see sperm damage in boys. And that's using it in the recommended FCC way that the study was tested. So you can only imagine if your kids are exposed that long, what it's going to do. Well, if you also take into account the multiple sources of exposure within that time frame that we discussed, you're looking at possible additional exposures from wireless Wi-Fi routers, laptops, iPads, smartboards, printers that may also be in the classroom, cell phones that kids either have on them or other classmates have. So you're looking at really, really high radio frequency exposure circumstances in a classroom scenario. That's on a daily basis. There's no doubt that there's biological effects that happen under these allowable limits, and children today are at a particularly high risk. So just to give you a little insight on exactly how and why this happened with schools, the FCC has played a unique role in the internet infrastructure to schools, public and private, and public libraries. In 2014, the FCC E-Modernization Act was revised under the Obama administration, which set a 5-year goal that brought broadband to 99% of schools in the United States. And of course, this was incentivized through Common Core technology requirements and through special funds. And those special funds are under another act called the Smart School Bond Act, which allocates funds for technology only. So they can get a specific grant just for technology to purchase items for their infrastructure if they're going to be building out, for their devices. And it doesn't allocate a restriction on how you're going to be doing that. You don't have to use wireless. You can use wired. So it's really up to the schools. Unfortunately, they're not educated on the matter, and they just follow the trends of the technology. And what's really getting pushed right now is wireless. So just to give you an example of how much money some schools can actually get, It's quite astounding. So the town of Huntington School District received $1.4 million just for technology. Patchogue received $6 million. So overall, New York State granted $2 billion in Smart School Bond Act funds so that schools can get ready for technology and bringing it to each and every classroom. In 2020, this represents an additional problem because of COVID and the stay-at-home. A lot more kids are using the devices. Schools are loaning the laptops with, already equipped with wireless activity, creating hotspots, things like that, so that they can get the access that they need in order to do the remote learning. But in addition to that, there's been an advancement in the technology with Wi-Fi. So released recently was Wi-Fi 6, which works off of 6 gigahertz. So schools are now able to upgrade their Wi-Fi system networks to allow for 6 gigahertz Wi-Fi routers, and those can be in the classroom and everywhere in the building. So those 6 gigahertz is just within the allowable limit of what is considered the new 5G spectrum. So that's, pretty scary. And then to take it even further, they're looking at WiGig, which is actually in the 60 gigahertz band. And that is also geared towards larger schools, universities, places where a lot of people are going to be on the network. And that's a much, much higher frequency. Particularly, school districts like to argue back that Wi-Fi routers are a lot less, give off a lot less power output than a cell phone or even, a cell tower. What many studies, and even a really great independent industry study, which was the 2000 T-Mobile industry study, a summary of 220 peer-reviewed studies, found that there was a significant effect with pulse modification of waves. And what pulse modification fields, they basically, it's a man-made signal that they purposely pulse. So as compared to a continuous wave, it can pulse up to 1,000 times per second. So what happens is if you, if you conceptualize it like this, you have a rock, and you take that rock and you beam 2 different signals at it. One's going to be a nice continuous stream. It's going to apply a nice steady pressure. The other one is going to continuously pulse at it, almost like a hammer beat. So which one do you think is going to break the rock quicker? Now, if you take that rock and you replace it with a human who's got soft tissue, bone, cells, you can just imagine the negative effects that you could expect. Something to consider when talking about this. But let's see. Unfortunately, the FCC has never revised their 1996 limits, and after this industry T-Mobile study, they were advised to immediately reduce it by a factor of 1,000.